I am Amber, 23 years old today. What should have been a celebration turned into a nightmare when my phone buzzed. The text from Dad read, "Sold your laptop. Your sister needs a new phone. Be grateful, we feed you." I stared in disbelief as another message appeared. Also, you will pay her tuition, $5,800 by Friday. When I replied, "No chance," his response was immediate, "Then get out. You are cut off." So, I left quietly the next morning. Now, my dad is calling every number he knows, trying to find me. If you are watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you are from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up for yourself against family. Trust me, what happens next will show you exactly why boundaries matter. My story really begins long before that text message. I grew up in a middle-class home in suburban Chicago, with what looked like a perfectly normal family from the outside. My father, Robert, built his accounting firm from the ground up and never let anyone forget it. He ran our family like he ran his business, with strict control over every decision and dollar spent. My mother, Nancy, learned early in their marriage that keeping peace meant never challenging him. She became the ultimate peacekeeper, smoothing ruffled feathers, but never actually solving the underlying problems. Then there was my sister Brittany, 3 years younger than me. From the moment she was born, the family dynamic shifted. She was the baby, the princess, the one whose tears could instantly mobilize everyone. I do not resent her for being loved, but the stark difference in how we were treated was impossible to ignore. "Amber, you are the oldest. You need to set an example," became the constant refrain whenever I needed something. Meanwhile, Brittany received without ever having to ask. When I needed braces at 13, I had to babysit for 6 months to contribute to the cost. When Brittany needed them 2 years later, they were scheduled without question. Family helps family. Dad would lecture whenever I expressed frustration, but somehow the helping only flowed in one direction. I was expected to share my clothes, give up my weekends to drive Brittany to mall trips with friends, and later edit her college papers while balancing my own coursework. The pattern continued into adulthood. While Brittany attended an expensive private university with all expenses covered, I cobbled together scholarships, worked 30 hours a week at a coffee shop, and still graduated with student loans. Not that anyone came to my graduation, since it conflicted with Brittany's sophomore year spring formal. Last year, I finally caught a break. After 2 years of building my portfolio while working entry-level design jobs, I landed a position at Horizon Graphics, a growing design firm in downtown Chicago. The promotion came with better pay, more responsibility, and professional respect I had never experienced before. I invested nearly $2,000 in a professional-grade laptop that could handle the design software I needed for my projects. That laptop represented my independence, my career, my future. My birthday this year fell on a Tuesday. At 23, I was not expecting a huge celebration, but after securing 3 new clients the previous month, I thought maybe, just maybe, my family might acknowledge my success. Maybe this would be the year things changed. I was wrong. So very wrong. Tuesday, April 12th dawned bright and clear. I woke up feeling genuinely optimistic. 23 felt significant somehow, like I was finally stepping fully into adulthood. I got ready for work with extra care, putting on my favorite navy blue dress and taking time with my makeup. My phone pinged with birthday messages from college friends and a sweet email from my team at work. Lauren, my closest friend since high school, had sent a funny GIF and promised drinks after work. But nothing from my family. Not unusual, I told myself. They probably would call later. The morning at work was surprisingly festive. My supervisor, Melissa, had brought in cupcakes, and the design team sang an embarrassingly loud rendition of Happy Birthday when I walked into our weekly meeting. Client calls went smoothly, and by lunch I was riding high on birthday goodwill. Then my phone buzzed at 12:32 p.m., a text from Dad. Finally, I thought opening it with a smile that quickly disappeared. "Sold your laptop. Brittany needs new phone. Hers broke yesterday. Got $700 for it. Be grateful we feed you when you visit." I stared at the screen, certain I was misunderstanding. The laptop that was in my bedroom at my parents' house, where I still lived while saving for my own place. The laptop with all my client files, design projects, and portfolio work. The laptop I was planning to bring to work tomorrow for a major client presentation. My fingers shook as I typed, "Please tell me this is a joke. All my work is on that laptop. I need it for my job." His response came immediately. "Should have taken it with you. Not my problem. Brittany needed phone for school. Your sister comes first." The office around me faded as panic set in. I stepped into an empty conference room to call him, but he did not pick up. I tried again, then sent another text, "Dad, I will help buy Brittany a phone, but I need my laptop back." "Where did you sell it? I will pay to get it back." 3 excruciating minutes passed before his reply. "Too late. Already sold. Also, you need to transfer $5,800 for Brittany tuition by Friday. She has registration and her account is on hold." The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the conference table for support. $5,800. My entire savings was just over $6,000 painstakingly accumulated for a security deposit and first month's rent on an apartment of my own. "No chance," I texted back. "That is my money for an apartment. Brittany gets full support from you and Mom. I have been paying my own way for years." The response was immediate and cold. "This is not a request. Family helps family. Transfer the money by Friday or find somewhere else to live. You are cut off." My phone rang. "Brittany." I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Amber, Dad said, you are giving me money for tuition. Thank you so much. I was so worried about registration. You are literally saving my life right now." "Brittany, I cannot give you $5,800. I do not have it to give." "But Dad said." "I do not care what Dad said. That is my apartment money. And did you know he sold my laptop for your new phone?" A pause. "Oh, yeah. My phone broke and I need it for school. But Dad said you never use that laptop anyway." "Never use it. It is my work computer. I have a major presentation tomorrow." "Well, maybe you should have taken it to work then," she said, her voice taking on the defensive tone I knew so well. "Anyway, I really need the tuition money. My registration is Friday and Daddy said you would handle it." "I am not handling it. I am not giving you my savings." "God, you are so selfish. You have a job. You can save more money. I am trying to get my education." She was shouting now. "Mom, Amber is being selfish again." I heard my mother in the background. Then she came on the line. "Amber, honey, please do not upset your sister. You know how important her education is to your father." "Mom, Dad sold my work laptop without asking me. I have a presentation tomorrow." A pause. "Well, I am sure he thought he was helping Brittany. You know she needs her phone for school." "And what about what I need? What about my job?" "Do not be dramatic, Amber. You can probably use a computer at work. Family comes first. Your father expects you home for dinner at 6. We can discuss the tuition then." She hung up before I could respond. I sat in the conference room trying to process what was happening. My entire family expected me to lose my savings and my essential work equipment without complaint. Because family helps family only ever applied to me, helping them never the reverse. I somehow made it through the rest of the workday. Melissa noticed something was wrong, but I mumbled something about a headache. I canceled drinks with Lauren. I could not talk about this yet without breaking down. Dinner was exactly as awful as I expected. Dad lectured about family responsibility while carving the roast beef. Mom kept offering me more potatoes as if food could smooth over the situation. Brittany alternated between ignoring me completely and making dramatic statements about how her education was hanging in the balance. "I expect the money transferred by noon on Friday," Dad said as dessert was served. No one had mentioned my birthday. No card, no gift, not even a happy birthday. "I am not giving Brittany my savings," I said quietly, "and I want compensation for my laptop." The table went silent. Dad put down his fork slowly. "You live in my house, eat my food, use my electricity, and this is the gratitude I get after everything we have done for you." "What exactly have you done for me lately, Dad? I pay for my car, my phone, my insurance. I buy my own clothes, pay my student loans, and contribute to groceries. Meanwhile, Brittany gets everything handed to her." "That is not fair," Brittany cried. Just because you decided to be all independent does not mean I should suffer. Enough, Dad slammed his hand on the table. Amber, you have until Friday. Transfer the money and start showing some gratitude or find somewhere else to live. I am done with your attitude. I looked at Mom, who was staring at her plate. No help there. Never any help there. Fine, I said, standing up. I will be out by morning. That night alone in my room, I made the hardest decision of my life, but also somehow the easiest. For 23 years, I had tried to earn approval that was never going to come. I had dimmed my light to avoid outshining Brittany. I had given and given without receiving even basic respect in return. It was time to go. Back in my bedroom, I took stock of my situation with strange clarity. The panic and hurt were still there, but beneath them was something new: resolve. I pulled out my suitcase from under the bed and began a methodical inventory of what I owned versus what I needed. Clothing was easy mostly. Professional attire for work, casual clothes, a few sentimental items like my college sweatshirt. I left behind anything purchased by my parents, which was not much in recent years. Toiletries, makeup, the books that had sustained me through lonely high school years, all came with me. I found my old external hard drive and said a prayer of thanks to my past self for backing up most of my work files last weekend. Not everything was there, but enough that I might avoid complete professional disaster. My financial situation required clear thinking. I had exactly $6,247 in savings. My next paycheck would come in 9 days. My monthly expenses included car payment $315, car insurance $120, student loan payment $230, phone $75, credit card minimum $100. I would now need to add rent, utilities, food, and gas, and a new laptop somehow. The math was daunting, but not impossible if I found a roommate situation rather than my own apartment. I texted Lauren, major family blow-up. Need place to stay for a few days while I figure things out. Can I crash on your couch? Her response was immediate. My door is always open. What happened? Will explain when I see you. Probably coming tomorrow morning. With lodging temporarily secured, I continued packing. In my closet, I found the shoebox containing remnants of my childhood. Report cards with straight, as that were never quite acknowledged. Ribbons from art competitions. A small trophy from the writing contest I won in 8th grade that Dad had called a nice hobby before turning the conversation to Brittany making the junior cheerleading squad. I took the small jewelry box my grandmother had given me before she passed, the only person who had ever seemed to see me clearly. I left the gold bracelet Dad had given me for my 16th birthday, identical to the one he had given Brittany for her 13th. By 2 a.m., my car was quietly packed with everything I was taking. I sat at my desk and wrote a brief note. I have decided to move out as suggested. I will not be transferring money to Brittany as that is my emergency fund and apartment savings. I am not cutting contact with the family, but I am establishing boundaries. I will reach out when I am settled. Amber. I placed it on my perfectly made bed, took one last look around the room that had never really felt like mine, and silently closed the door. The house was dark and quiet as I carried my last bag downstairs. No one stirred as I slipped out the front door for the last time. The click of the lock felt oddly final. The April night was chilly as I started my car and backed carefully out of the driveway. I did not look back at the house. Instead, I drove toward the rising sun, exhausted but somehow lighter than I had felt in years. Lauren lived in a small apartment about 30 minutes from my parents' suburban neighborhood. As I drove through the gradually awakening city, reality began to set in. I had just left home with no real plan. I had enough savings to stay afloat for maybe 2 months if I was extremely careful. I had no laptop for work. I had only the vaguest notion of what came next. And yet beneath the fear was a surprising sense of liberation. For the first time in my life, no one would be comparing me to Brittany, or telling me to be grateful for scraps of attention, or expecting me to sacrifice my needs for someone else. The road ahead was terrifying, but it was mine. I arrived at Lauren House just as the sun was fully up. She met me at the door in pajamas, hair tousled from sleep concern written across her face. You look like you have not slept, she said, pulling me into a hug. Come in. Coffee is brewing. Sitting at her tiny kitchen table, the enormity of what I had done hit me all at once. Tears came without warning, and once they started, they would not stop. Lauren sat with me, refilling my coffee, offering tissues, and listening as the whole story poured out. Your father sold your laptop. Without asking on your birthday, her outrage was validating in a way I had never experienced from my own family. And they wanted all your savings for your sister tuition. After you put yourself through college, each question highlighted the absurdity of what had been normalized in my family. By the time I finished talking, sunlight was streaming through Lauren's kitchen window, illuminating dust motes and possibilities. You can stay here as long as you need, Lauren said firmly. We will figure this out together. For the first time since reading that text message, I took a deep breath that did not catch on a sob. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was not walking it alone. Lauren's one-bedroom apartment was tiny, but she cleared space in her closet and bathroom without complaint. That first morning after a shower and more coffee, I called work to explain my situation. I am so sorry, Melissa, but my laptop was taken and I have lost access to some of the files for the Henderson presentation. I couldn't bring myself to say my father had sold it. There was a pause on the line. That is a problem, Amber. The Henderson account is significant. I have most files on my external drive, and I can recreate what is missing, but I will need to use the office computer. Come in early, and we will figure it out, she said, her tone softening slightly. Sometimes technology fails us all. I arrived at the office by 7:30 a.m., running on coffee and adrenaline. By lunchtime, I had reconstructed enough of my work to salvage the presentation. The client would never know the difference, but I knew how close I had come to professional disaster. My phone had been buzzing all morning. I ignored it until I had a moment alone. 17 missed calls from Dad, 5 from Mom, 3 from Brittany, and dozens of text messages. Dad 7:05 a.m. Where are you? Car is gone. Dad 7:15 a.m. Answer your phone. Dad 7:32 a.m. This is childish behavior. Come home immediately. Mom 7:45 a.m. Your father is very upset. Please call us. Brittany 8:01 a.m. OMG, you actually left. Dad is freaking out. Dad 8:30 a.m. You have responsibilities to this family. This is unacceptable. Mom 9:15 a.m. Please just call to let us know you are safe. The messages continued escalating in urgency and anger. My father had clearly not expected me to actually leave. He had thrown down an ultimatum expecting me to cave as I always had before. I sent one text to my mother, I am safe. I am at work. I need some time. Her response was immediate, come home after work, we can talk this out. I did not reply. Instead, I threw myself into the Henderson presentation, which went surprisingly well despite everything. Melissa even complimented my quick thinking in reconstructing the missing elements. After work, I returned to Lauren's apartment to find more messages. My father had now involved my aunts and uncles who were texting with concerns about my mental state and rash decisions. Your family is really pulling out all the stops, Lauren said as she read over my shoulder. Classic flying monkeys. Flying monkeys. You know, from Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch sends them to do her bidding. Your dad is sending relatives to pressure you because his direct approach is not working. That night, Brittany called again. Against my better judgment, I answered. How could you do this to me? She demanded, without preamble. Registration is tomorrow, and Dad says he cannot pay my tuition because you took all your money. I did not take my money, Brittany. It was always my money. For my apartment. But I need it more. I could get kicked out of school. Why is your tuition suddenly my responsibility? Dad has paid it for 3 years. His business had some cash flow issues this quarter, she said, her voice dropping. But he did not want me to worry about it. He said you would help. A piece clicked into place. This was not just about the usual favoritism. Dad was having financial problems he had not disclosed, and his solution was to drain my savings, rather than tell Brittany she might need to get a part-time job or take a student loan like most college students. I am sorry about dad business, but that does not make your tuition my problem, I said firmly. I suggest you talk to the financial aid office about emergency loans or a payment plan. You are so selfish, she cried. Family is supposed to help family. Funny how that only applies when you need something from me. Did you even try to stop Dad from selling my laptop? Silence then. It is just a laptop. You can buy another one. With what money, Brittany? The money you want for tuition. She hung up on me. Minutes later, my mother called. Brittany is crying, Amber. I hope you are happy. The familiar guilt rose, but this time I pushed it back down. Mom, did you know Dad is having business problems? A telling pause. Your father handles the finances, but we will be fine as long as this family sticks together. You mean as long as I hand over my savings to fix everyone else's problems? Do not be dramatic. This is temporary. My answer is still no. The next day, Lauren helped me create a budget and scan apartment listings. We found a promising lead, a room in a shared house with 3 other young professionals for $700 monthly, including utilities. It was in a decent neighborhood and only a 15-minute drive from my office. It is not fancy, but it would give you breathing room to save for a better place, Lauren pointed out. I arranged to see it that evening. The house was older but well-maintained with a small bedroom available immediately. The roommates, 2 women and 1 man in their 20s, all worked full-time and seemed respectful of space and privacy. By the end of the visit, I had paid a deposit and signed a 3-month agreement. You can move in this weekend, said Jasmine, a nurse who had shown me around. We are pretty quiet during the week since we all work different schedules. Perfect, I said, feeling a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. This was really happening. I was starting over from scratch. The financial reality was daunting. After paying the security deposit and first-month rent, my savings had dwindled significantly. I would need to find additional income to rebuild my safety net and eventually replace my laptop. I applied for evening and weekend retail positions, anything that would not conflict with my design job. After several applications, I secured weekend shifts at a bookstore in the mall minimum wage plus employee discount. It was not ideal, but it would help. The first week passed in a blur of work, apartment hunting, job applications, and dodging increasingly aggressive messages from my family. By Friday, Brittany was texting that she had to take a student loan because of me, and my father had escalated to threatening to report my car stolen despite the fact that it was fully in my name. My mother showed up at my workplace on Friday afternoon, causing a scene in the reception area until Melissa intervened. Amber is in a client meeting and cannot be disturbed, she told my mother firmly. You will need to contact her outside of business hours. Later, Melissa called me into her office. Is everything all right at home, Amber? Your mother seemed very upset. I took a deep breath and gave her an abbreviated version of the situation. To my surprise, her expression softened. Family dynamics can be complicated, she said. Take Monday off if you need it to get settled into your new place. Just make sure the Donaldson mock-ups are ready for Tuesday. Her understanding brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you. They will be ready, I promise. That weekend, Lauren helped me move my meager possessions into the shared house. My new room was small but clean with a twin bed desk and small closet. My roommates respectfully gave me space to settle in, though. Jasmine dropped off a small houseplant as a welcome gift. Everyone needs something living in their space, she said with a smile. This one is nearly impossible to kill. Just water it once a week. Looking around my new room that night, surrounded by boxes containing everything I owned in the world, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Fear of the unknown, pride in taking this step, grief for the family support I had always craved but never truly received, and underneath it all, a small but growing sense of possibility. The next 2 weeks brought new challenges. My family moved from angry messages to more creative forms of pressure. My father showed up at Horizon Graphics on Tuesday afternoon, demanding to speak with me. Security ultimately had to escort him out, leaving me mortified in front of colleagues I respected. Your father seems Intense, Melissa said carefully afterward. If you need to adjust your work schedule for personal reasons, let me know. I thanked her but insisted I could handle it. In truth, I was terrified the situation would affect my professional reputation. I needed this job more than ever. The financial strain was constant and grinding. After paying my regular bills and setting aside money for gas and groceries, I had little left. The bookstore job helped, but working 7 days a week left me perpetually exhausted. I started bringing my lunch to work instead of buying it, cut out all non-essential spending, and learned to stretch groceries in ways I never had before. When my car started making an ominous knocking sound, I nearly broke down in the parking lot. A mechanic quoted $800 for repairs I couldn't possibly afford. I was looking at bus schedules and calculating longer commute times when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Amber, this is Jackie Winters. We met at the design conference last month. I vaguely remembered a confident woman in her 50s who had complimented my portfolio display. I recently started a new creative agency, and I remembered your eye for detail. Would you be interested in some freelance work? I need help with a client pitch, and it pays $500 for the project. It felt like a lifeline thrown when I was drowning. Absolutely. When do you need it by? Monday if possible. I can email you the details if you will send me your address. I hesitated, then admitted I actually lost my laptop recently. I would need to use the computers at work after hours. That is a problem for a designer, she said. Tell you what, I have an older MacBook that still runs the design software. You can borrow it for this project, and we will see where things go from there. 2 days later, I met Jackie at a coffee shop. She handed over not only the promised laptop, but also an external hard drive with all the necessary files and software. Take good care of it, but consider it yours to use until you can replace your own, she said. I know what it is like to be starting out with limited resources. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The freelance project went well, leading to another, then another. Jackie became both a client and an informal mentor, offering practical advice and occasional dinner invitations, where she shared stories of her own career struggles. I left an abusive marriage at 28 with nothing but my portfolio and a maxed-out credit card, she told me over pasta one evening. Everyone told me I was throwing away security. 20 years later, I own my agency and my home, and I answer to no one but myself and my clients. Her story gave me courage during the increasingly difficult family situations. My sister had escalated to calling mutual friends and distant relatives, spreading her version of events that I had abandoned the family in a time of need, that I was selfish and ungrateful, that I had caused her academic probation by refusing to help with tuition. Some believed her. High school friends sent concerned messages. A cousin I had once been close to texted that I should stop being stubborn and help my sister. Even Lauren parents who had known me for years asked pointed questions about both sides of the story. The constant defense of my decisions was exhausting. Some days I questioned whether I had done the right thing. Maybe I should have just given Brittany the money. Maybe I was being selfish. Then my mother called with news that temporarily shook my resolve. Your father had a minor heart episode, she said, her voice trembling. The doctor called it a warning sign. He needs to reduce his stress. My stomach dropped. Is he okay? For now. But he is worried about the business, and Brittany is struggling at school, and now this situation with you. It is all taking a toll. The implication was clear. My departure was contributing to my father's health problems. The guilt was overwhelming. I will come visit him, I offered. But Mom, I cannot move back. He needs his family together, she insisted. He needs to know you support him. I agreed to Sunday dinner, dreading it, but feeling I had no choice. When I arrived at my parents' house, things seemed eerily normal. Mom had prepared my favorite meal, Dad was watching football, and Brittany was texting on a brand new iPhone. The passive-aggressive comments started before we even sat down. Look who decided family matters after all, Dad said, his tone light but with an edge. We saved your old room, Mom added. Everything is just as you left it. Dinner conversation carefully avoided any mention of my departure or current living situation. Instead, Dad talked extensively about his business challenges and Brittany's sorority activities. When I mentioned a new project at work, the subject was quickly changed. After dinner, Dad asked me to join him in his study, the traditional location for serious discussions in our household. "I think you have made your point," he said, sitting behind his desk while I took the smaller chair across from him. "This little independence experiment has gone on long enough." "It is not an experiment, Dad. I have an apartment and roommates. I have responsibilities." "And you do not think you have responsibilities here. Your sister is struggling without your help. Your mother is taking on extra stress because you are not here. My health is suffering." Each word was a carefully placed arrow aimed at my weakest points. For a moment, I wavered. The familiar guilt and desire for approval rose within me. "I can help in other ways," I offered. "I can come for dinner more often, or help Brittany with her papers." He waved this away. "Half measures. This family needs you here, Amber. Your place is here." "My place is where I choose it to be." I said, the words coming out stronger than I expected. "I am an adult, Dad. I get to decide where I live and how I spend my money." His expression hardened. "As long as you maintain this attitude, you can consider yourself cut off from family resources. No inheritance, no help with your career, nothing." "I have been cut off from family resources since I was 18, I replied, standing up. "That is nothing new." I left soon after ignoring my mother's tears and Brittany pointed silence. Driving back to my shared house, I felt both drained and oddly strengthened. I had faced the full force of my father's manipulation and remained standing. The next week brought a surprise. An email from the University Financial Aid Office responding to an inquiry I had never made. "Dear Miss Anderson, regarding your sister Brittany's financial status, our records show her tuition has been paid in full for the current semester through your father's standard payment plan. She is not at risk of disenrollment, as previously stated." I stared at the screen in disbelief. The tuition crisis that had started this whole chain of events had been a fabrication. My father had never been in danger of being unable to pay. It had all been a test of my compliance, or perhaps an opportunity to drain my savings to prevent my independence. The revelation should have made me angry, but instead I felt a strange sense of clarity. The patterns that had defined my family dynamic were now unmistakably clear. I could see the manipulation for what it was, and in seeing it, I found power to resist it. That night, I called Jackie and accepted her offer of more consistent freelance work. "I want to build something of my own," I told her. "Something that cannot be taken away." "That is exactly the right attitude," she said approvingly. "Independence is built one brick at a time." I was laying those bricks slowly but surely. Each day I remained on my own was a victory. Each bill I paid myself a declaration of independence. Thanksgiving arrived with dreaded inevitability. I had successfully avoided major family gatherings for months, but the holiday was different. Refusing to attend the traditional celebration at my grandmother's house would create a family scandal that would ripple through every branch of the extended family. After much deliberation, I decided to go for the afternoon, only driving myself so I could leave when needed. I brought a homemade pie, determined to be polite but distant. The house was warm and noisy when I arrived, filled with aunts, uncles, and cousins. My grandmother, now 80 and increasingly frail, greeted me with genuine delight. "There is my girl," she said, holding my face in her soft hands. "I have missed you at Sunday dinners." I helped in the kitchen, catching up with Aunt Susan and Uncle Paul, carefully steering conversations away from my current living situation. For a while, it almost felt normal, like I was still part of this family tapestry without the complications. Then my father cornered me in the hallway. "Your mother is expecting you to announce your return home today," he said, without preamble. "It would be the perfect Thanksgiving gift for the family." I stared at him, caught off guard by the directness of the ambush. "I am not moving back, Dad." His face darkened. "You have made your point. This rebellion has gone on long enough." "It is not a rebellion. It is my life." "A life you are barely managing," he scoffed. "Your mother tells me you are working at a bookstore on weekends. Is that really the future you want? Struggling to make rent in some shared housing situation?" Before I could respond, my grandmother appeared in the hallway. "Robert, I need you to carve the turkey," she said, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "Amber, would you help me with something in my room first?" Grateful for the rescue, I followed her to the small bedroom she kept at my aunt's house. She closed the door behind us and sat on the edge of her bed, patting the space beside her. "Now, tell me what is really going on," she said. "I have been hearing all sorts of stories, but I want to hear it from you." The simple act of being asked for my side opened a floodgate. I told her everything from the birthday text about my laptop to the false tuition crisis to the current standoff. She listened without interruption, her lined face serious. When I finished, she took my hand in hers. "Your grandfather, God rest him, was just like your father. Everything had to be his way. It took me 30 years to stand up to him, and by then so much life had passed me by." She reached into her bedside drawer and pulled out an envelope. "I was saving this for Christmas, but I think you need it now." Inside was a check for $2,000. "Grandma, I cannot take this," I protested. "You absolutely can, and will," she said firmly. "This is not charity. This is me investing in your independence. Use it for a proper laptop, something no one can take from you." Tears filled my eyes. "Why are you the only one who understands?" "Because I lived my own version of this story," she said simply, "and I want a different ending for you." Dinner was tense but manageable, with my grandmother's subtle support. When Brittany complained loudly about her student loan applications, Grandma smoothly changed the subject. When Dad began a pointed story about ungrateful children, she shut it down with a sharp look. The real confrontation came during dessert. My father stood glass, raised, and called for attention. "Before we give thanks, I think we need to clear the air about family matters." He began looking directly at me. "Amber has been going through a phase of rebellion, causing her mother and I significant worry. Today, I am hoping she has an announcement to make that will bring peace back to our family." All eyes turned to me. I felt my face flush with embarrassment and anger. "I do not have any announcement," I said clearly, "except that I am grateful to be here today with all of you." "Amber," he said, his voice taking on the warning tone I knew so well. "This has gone on long enough. It is time to come home and resume your family responsibilities." "I have a home," I replied, standing as well. "And my only responsibility is to build a life that brings me peace and fulfillment." "After everything we have done for you," he began, but I cut him off. "What exactly have you done for me lately, Dad?" "Sold my laptop without permission, tried to take my savings, shown up at my workplace, and embarrassed me." A shocked silence fell over the table. No one ever interrupted my father. "I am not in rebellion," I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. "I am an adult who made a choice to live independently. That should be celebrated, not punished." "How dare you speak to your father this way?" he began, but to everyone's surprise, Aunt Susan spoke up. "Robert, the girl has a point. She is 23, not 16. If she wants to live on her own, that is her business." My uncle nodded. "I moved out at 19. Best thing I ever did." My father's face reddened. "This is different. She abandoned her family when we needed her." "Actually," I said, taking a deep breath, "I recently learned that Brittany tuition was never in jeopardy. It was already paid through your regular payment plan. I have the email from the financial aid office." Gasps and murmurs spread around the table. Brittany looked confused, then embarrassed, as she realized she had been part of a manipulation. "Is that true, Robert?" my grandmother asked, her voice cutting through the chaos. My father sputtered, then deflated slightly. "The payment was temporarily delayed. I was going to use Amber funds as a stopgap." Without telling her the truth, Grandma noted. Without asking properly. The dynamic had shifted. For the first time, others were seeing what I had experienced for years. My father was still speaking, making excuses about family unity and parental authority, but the power of his words had diminished. I excused myself shortly after hugging my grandmother and those relatives who had shown support. As I was leaving, Aunt Susan followed me to my car. "I have watched this dynamic for years," and said nothing, she admitted. "I am sorry for that. You deserve better." "Thank you for speaking up today," I said, hugging her. Call me if you need anything, she said. And I mean anything. I drove home feeling lighter somehow. The confrontation had been painful but necessary. Something fundamental had shifted, not just in how my family saw me, but in how I saw myself. The next week brought unexpected developments. Jackie offered me a part-time position at her agency, with flexible hours that would allow me to keep my main job, while phasing out the exhausting weekend retail work. You have real talent, she said, and more importantly, real determination. I want that energy in my company. With my grandmother gift and my first paycheck from Jackie Agency, I purchased a new laptop even better than the one my father had sold. Setting it up in my small room, I felt a sense of ownership that went beyond the physical object. My sister texted a few days after Thanksgiving, her tone noticeably different. I did not know Dad lied about the tuition, she wrote. I thought it was real. I believe you, I responded after careful consideration. But you still participated in pressuring me to give up my savings. I know, I am sorry. 2 words I could not remember hearing from her before. I have been thinking about things, about how differently we have been treated. It was a small acknowledgement but significant. We arranged to meet for coffee the following weekend, neutral territory, for a conversation long overdue. Meanwhile, my father switched tactics. Having failed at direct confrontation, he began focusing on his own problems, sending messages about business difficulties and health concerns, clearly hoping to activate my caretaking instincts. Your father really needs your support right now, my mother texted daily. Just a phone call would mean so much. I maintained firm boundaries, while still showing basic compassion. I sent a get well card to my father. I called my mother once a week for short, carefully managed conversations. I met my sister for coffee and listened to her halting attempts to understand our family dynamic from a new perspective. It was progress, however small, but the most significant progress was happening within me. I was building a life on my own terms. My shared housing situation, which my father had mocked, had become a supportive community. My roommates and I cooked together on Sundays, shared streaming service passwords, and looked out for each other in practical ways. My work at both jobs was thriving. Melissa had noted my improved confidence and assigned me to lead a small team on a new project. Jackie was introducing me to her industry contacts, building my professional network beyond what I could have accessed through my father connections. 6 months after that fateful birthday text, I received another message from my father. This one was different. Your mother and I would like to have dinner with you next week. There are matters to discuss. I agreed, but suggested a restaurant rather than their house. On neutral ground, we met, the 3 of us sitting somewhat stiffly around a table. Your grandmother tells me you are doing well, my father began, clearly uncomfortable. I am, I said simply. Your room is still available, my mother added quickly. Anytime you want to come home. Thank you, but I have renewed my lease for another 6 months. My father cleared his throat. I may have been hasty in how I handled things last spring. From him, this was as close to an apology as I was likely to get. I nodded in acknowledgement. We miss you, my mother said, reaching for my hand across the table. The house is not the same without you. I miss aspects of home too, I admitted, but I needed to establish my own life. The conversation was awkward but civil. No dramatic reconciliation, no complete resolution of our differences. But it was a beginning, a recognition that our relationship would need to be rebuilt on new terms with boundaries and mutual respect that had not existed before. As we parted, my father hesitated, then said gruffly, I looked up that design agency you are working for. Jackie Winters has a good reputation in the industry. Coming from him, it was high praise. I simply nodded and thanked him for dinner. Walking to my car afterward, I realized I no longer felt the desperate need for his approval that had driven so many of my choices. I appreciated the small olive branch, but my sense of self-worth no longer depended on his validation. It was the most valuable lesson of my independence. I was enough just as I was without anyone else's acknowledgement or permission. As summer faded into fall, I found myself approaching the 1-year mark of my independence, with a sense of accomplishment I had never experienced before. My tiny bedroom in the shared house had become genuinely mine, decorated with secondhand finds and small art pieces I had begun creating again after years of setting aside that passion. My financial situation had stabilized. With my dual income from Horizon Graphics and Jackie Agency, I had rebuilt my savings and even started a small retirement account. The borrowed laptop had been returned, replaced by my own equipment that no one could take from me. More significant were the internal changes. The constant anxiety that had been my companion for years had diminished. I made decisions based on my own needs and values rather than anticipating others' reactions. I spoke in meetings without downplaying my ideas. I set boundaries in all relationships, not just with my family. My mother had begun visiting me once a month, tentatively at first, then with growing comfort. She would bring small housewarming gifts, unnecessary but well-intentioned, and we would have lunch or visit a museum together. During one such visit, sitting in a cafe near my apartment, she surprised me with an admission. "I have started seeing a therapist," she said, stirring her tea nervously. "After everything that happened, I realized I needed to understand my own patterns better." "That is wonderful, Mom," I said, genuinely pleased. "How is it going?" "Hard," she admitted. "We are talking about codependency and enabling behaviors, things I never saw in myself before." She looked up at me. "I owe you an apology, Amber. I should have protected you more." The words I had longed to hear for years brought unexpected tears. "Thank you for saying that." "Your father and I are also doing some counseling together," she added. "Just a few sessions so far. He resisted at first, but after his business partner suggested it might help with their working relationship, he finally agreed." The news was shocking but welcome. My father seeking help of any kind represented a seismic shift in family dynamics. Brittany, too, was changing in small but noticeable ways. After her uncomfortable realization at Thanksgiving that she had been manipulated, she had begun questioning other family patterns. She had taken a part-time job at the campus library, her first employment ever, and had started managing her own expenses with a budgeting app. "Dad wanted to buy me a new winter coat," she told me during one of our now regular coffee meetings. "But I told him I would rather save up and buy it myself. You should have seen his face." We laughed together, the sound marking a new kind of sisterhood, emerging from the ashes of our old competitive dynamic. The reconciliation with my father was slower and more complicated. Our interactions remained somewhat formal, with careful conversation on neutral topics. But there was progress. He had stopped trying to control my choices or criticize my independence. When I mentioned considering a promotion that would take me to the New York office of Horizon Graphics, he surprised me by asking thoughtful questions about the opportunity rather than dismissing it. "It sounds like an excellent career move," he said during a family dinner, his tone genuine. "Though your mother would miss your monthly visits." It was not quite approval, but it was respect, and I found that was enough. My grandmother had become my most stalwart supporter and confidant. At 81, she had more energy and insight than many people decades younger. She delighted in hearing about my growing career and independent life. "You know what makes me happiest," she said during one visit. "Seeing you make choices because they bring you joy, not because they please others. That is true freedom." As my birthday approached again, I found myself reflecting on the dramatic changes a single year had brought. The painful text message that had started it all now seemed like a blessing in disguise, the catalyst for growth that might otherwise have taken decades. Lauren organized a small gathering at her apartment to celebrate my 24th birthday. My roommates came along with colleagues from both jobs and a few new friends I had made through a local art class. My mother attended briefly, bringing cupcakes and a gift card, still finding her place in my new life. Brittany came alone, having driven directly from campus. "Dad wanted to come," she explained, "but I told him you should get to decide when you are ready for that." It was perhaps the most thoughtful thing she had ever done for me. After everyone sang and I blew out the candles, Jackie raised her glass in a toast. "To Amber, who taught me something, I thought I already knew that building your life on your own terms is not just about physical independence, but about finding the courage to be authentically yourself even when it is terrifying." The words resonated deeply. This year had indeed been terrifying at times, lonely at others, but never once had I regretted my choice to leave. The path of independence was neither straight nor easy, but it was mine. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I received a text from my father. Happy birthday, Amber. Your grandmother tells me you are doing well at the design agency. The door is always open here, but I respect the door you have built for yourself. Dad. It was not an effusive message, but from him it represented significant growth. I sent a simple thank you in response, no longer needing more than that brief acknowledgement. Looking back at the journey from that devastating birthday text to today, I can see now that what seemed like cruelty was actually the push I needed to break free from patterns that would have defined my entire life. My father selling my laptop without permission was wrong. His attempt to take my savings was unjustified, but the crisis forced me to make a choice I might have postponed indefinitely otherwise. The lessons I have learned go beyond financial independence or physical separation from my family of origin. I have learned that boundaries are not selfish, but necessary. That saying no is sometimes the most self-respecting choice, that patterns established in childhood do not have to dictate adult relationships. Most importantly, I have learned that family is not just about biology, but about respect, reciprocity, and genuine care. I am building a family of choice alongside my family of origin, creating relationships based on mutual support, rather than obligation or guilt. The road ahead still holds challenges. My relationship with my father may never be completely healed, though it continues to evolve. My mother struggles to find her voice after decades of accommodation. Brittany is still learning what it means to be self-sufficient, and I am still discovering who I am when not defined by family expectations. But for the first time, I face these challenges from a position of strength rather than dependency. My worth is no longer tied to others' approval. My choices are my own. If you are facing similar struggles with family expectations or searching for your own independence, I hope my story offers some encouragement. Setting boundaries is not betrayal. Seeking independence is not selfishness. Building a life that honors your own needs is not just possible, it is necessary. What boundaries have you needed to set in your own life? Have you experienced similar family dynamics? Let me know in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of finding strength through difficult transitions. Share this with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself is both possible and worthwhile. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the most important approval you will ever receive is your own.